gonna introduce us? You
We're
gonna start
live.
us off? No.
No, I thought it was up to you.
All right, all right. I'll do it. I'll do this whole thing. How's it going, everybody? I hope we're live. I'm just gonna take just a second to watch the YouTube stream just to make sure that we are gonna be live. So you're gonna have a because there's a small delay between what I say and YouTube because YouTube is the worst. Everything is the worst. Just making sure. Oh, look, I didn't even notice you guys use my little icons for secure, private, untraceable, fungible on the thingy. It's kind of cool. It's kind of neat. SGPM hyperventilating is not there.
Okay, it says on my end that streaming, I see it. I'm able to play it back on my
Ah, okay. No, no, I refreshed the page and it's there. So, how's it going, everybody? Great, fantastic. My name is Diego Salazar. Most people in the community know me as Rarar. Um, it's an awful name. I wish I would have changed it. But we are who we are, right? We can't decide how we're born or who we are, so this is just me now. I am joined together here today with SGP, Justin. Everyone knows him. He's the big guy. He's the man on campus. He's Justin. Justin, go ahead and say hi. Say hi to all your fans.
Hello, everyone. I'm Justin, SGP, or with the even worse name than Rare, Samsung Galaxy player, if you sound it out in entirety. Yeah, just Diego asked me to be on here, so I'm happy to help. That's all I have to really say about myself.
Perfect. Thanks. I'm also we have Zayagu on here, who goes by well, you can introduce yourself. Hey, say hi, Zayagu. Say what's up.
Hey, so I'm you can call me Lucas or Ziagu if we're having a competition for worst names. Always get the question, how do you pronounce it? Honestly, I don't know. Uh, the letters look cool put together, so
All right, everybody. So everyone's who's here, hopefully everybody's here. 10 people are watching now. That's about 2/3 of the Monero community, so we're not doing too bad. Um, so everyone who's here, I particularly want just kind of to recap. There was recently a PR outreach and education work group that was started by XMR Halen, and some say the name some way like that, which I think is a fantastic idea. Great and good on him. But the thing with education and outreach is we have to make sure that the educators and the outreachers are educated. You know what I'm saying? So like, we got to make sure we're all on the same page in regards to Monero. Like, what is blockchain? What is Monero? What is the privacy tech of Monero? What is the ideologies that the community really works under? Because if we're not all on the same page, then part of that whole outreach process and education is just going to be sending a bunch of mixed messages to a bunch of people. So hopefully, one of the things that I hope to do now today is to kind of just go over the basics. And maybe you've heard all this before and it's just going to be a refresher. Maybe you'll hear one thing you didn't know before about all this. Maybe you have no idea about any of this. You're like, okay, you know what? I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about blockchain. I know that like people make money off of it, and Monero is a way to do that, and it's private. We're a privacy coin. So if that's where you are, great. I hope you'll learn something here today with us. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I don't have slides or anything prepared because this was kind of impromptu. This was kind of decided to do it last night, but I do have a can-do spirit, and you know what? Sometimes that's all that you need. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with kind of what. So, okay, when I explain Monero and kind of blockchain in general to people, I have one of two ways of approaching it. The first way is kind of explaining the economics behind it. You kind of jump into the what does blockchain really do in terms of a ledger technology, and the second way is kind of approaching it from a technological perspective, and that's kind of for more advanced people. So I'm actually going to start with the economics idea behind it, and so we're going to jump right into that area because I don't know where everybody is in terms of understanding. I'm just going to start with the lowest common denominator here. Don't be offended. I love you guys. I know you're all the smartest of the smart people, so I know you're going to get this really quickly. So the thing with the economics is we are kind of ideologically what are known as cypherpunks. Kind of the whole Bitcoin, and not everybody is because we're a vast community, so I don't want to speak for everybody. But a lot of the community, and especially Bitcoin and Monero, subscribe to something called cypherpunk ideology. You could go to Wikipedia and look that up. It's not that hard. But this is something we're going to come back to often because this explains kind of a community infrastructure, kind of our economic incentives. This explains a lot of things about the technology that we're trying to build. But basically, we're all about understanding the idea that um, humans have the potential to be corrupt. I think we all know that humans have the potential to be corrupt, and we're all about trying to remove human corruption in a systematic way, utilizing cryptography and technology, particularly encryption technology. Um, and we'll kind of jump more into that in just a little bit. But kind of the idea behind Bitcoin is that we are trying to, I don't want to say rebel. I think a good word would be SGP. What's that word when you're or that phrase when you're doing something without violence and but it's still rebellious. You know that phrase what I'm talking about?
Are you like referring to Martin Luther King or?
Yeah, well, a similar type of stuff. It's peaceful protest is type of stuff. Okay. Anyway, one of you guys is gonna know what I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna put it in the chat, and I'm gonna feel so stupid because I'm like that's what it is. Um, but the idea is that we cannot rely just on our overlords, whether they are good or bad, kind of malicious or non-malicious. We just cannot rely on them for everything. We have to do a good amount of stuff ourselves. And one of the things that we think is very ripe for corruption in this day and age is the fact that the government can produce fiat currency at their whimsy. And so, kind of what this looks like is in days past. Um, we were on a metal standard, meaning that $1 was equal to 1 ounce of silver. You can take your dollar and you can go trade it in for 1 ounce of silver. And the government could not produce more money, more dollar bills than they had metals in their reserves. So it was tied to something. But at some point in our history, we went off the metal standard, where the government's like, okay, so we know we have all these paper bills in distribution, but now they're no longer redeemable for any precious metals, gold or silver. So, but you still have to use them. You still have to accept goods and services for them, or we're going to put you in prison and you're going to face heavy fines. And so everyone's like, wait, but that's not fair. And the government's like, but we're the government and we have an army, so what are you going to do? And that's true. What are we going to do? So now, if we take out our dollars and we look at them, really they're actually worthless. There's no difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill. They're just cotton, linen, paper mix thingy with some ink on it and some faces of some people that we've never met. And it's like, okay, so actually, if I take this at face value, this is not worth anything. It's good for maybe burning in terms of real world value, but it only has value because we as a society agree it has value. So we're gonna really dig into that concept, and we're gonna talk about what gives something value. What gives something value? And there's two things I want to talk about, and this kind of like, okay, what does this have to do with blockchain? Don't worry, we'll get there, because all of this kind of sets the stage for how blockchain came to be and why it came to be, and even the problems it's trying to solve. So what gives something value? There's two primary things I want to cover here. The first one is, like I just said before, agreement by the people that something has value. Agreement, especially between two parties, two exchanging parties, that something has value. If you do not have this agreement, then it does not have value. And this is kind of surprising because a lot of us don't really dig deep and start thinking about our money in these types of ways. But let's say I'm a part of let's say we're both part of a popular, I don't know, online game. What was one of those old ones? Neopets. I never played any of these things, but I had friends that did. Club Penguin, one of those two things, right? And they have points that you can play different games or buy different prizes. I don't know. So let's say that with Neopets points are a thing. I don't know if they are, but let's pretend that they are. And then you can buy stuff with them. Let's say they're even tradable. So if you play this game Neopets and I don't play this game Neopets, and you want some eggs because I have chickens, and you say, hey Diego, look, I'm gonna make you the deal of a lifetime. Okay, I'm gonna give you 10,000 Neopets dollar points thingies in exchange for 2 eggs. But I'm like, yeah, but see, I don't play that game, and I have no plans of playing that game, so it's not worth it to me. I don't want to. I'll just keep my egg. there is no agreement of value on these Neopets points between us, so they can't be used as an exchange of value. Now, let's say conversely, I'm super into this game, right? I'm super into this game. It's probably my life. If people knew Diego, they would say Neopets, synonymous, right? So you're like, okay, Diego, I'm gonna give you 10,000 Neopets points dollar thingies in exchange for 2 eggs. I'm like, whoa, this is a steal for me. You know, I could buy all of the digital wardrobe, right? And so between you and I, there is an agreement of value in this Neopets points digital not doctor dollar thingies. And so I'm going to give you these 2 eggs. So the fact that you and I agree that this has value, it does. So every time I say this, I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's true. If we extrapolate that to entire countries, all of money is really just an illusion. See, it's all conspiracy and it's an illusion. We're in the matrix. No, all of money is really just an agreed upon value system where we say $1 is equal to $1, and this is within a country. Now there's an extra layer, as we already talked about. There's an extra layer of government saying, oh, and also if you don't accept this, you're going to go to prison. So that provides some pretty good incentive for us to all agree that this has value. So that's why we accept these dollar bills. Now things get a little murkier on a world stage because now it's like, okay, what is the dollar worth relative to the euro? And it sounds like a children's book. How much do we believe in the dollar versus how much the European people believe in the euro? And there's more variables like standing armies and stuff like that, but just kind of bringing it to a simple level for understanding's sake. Let's say, well, how much do we believe in the dollar versus how much do they believe in the euro versus how much does Russia believe in the ruble, and how much does everyone else in the world believe in those things as well? And that kind of affects value. Um, how much do we believe in these things? How much agreement do we have that this stuff has value? And if the agreement is not there, for example, I went to Russia recently with my wife. We were visiting family, and I took a whole bunch of dollar bills to exchange into rubles, and some of them were a little wrinkled and some of them were pristine. And so when I went to the little shop place and the banks where we were going to exchange, they took the pristine ones and they left aside the wrinkled ones. They're like, oh, we're not going to take these because we want to make sure they're pristine dollars. I don't know why. I mean, probably one of you guys knows why. But and if you've ever been to other countries and tried to do exchanges and stuff, you probably maybe have faced something similar. So what is completely interchangeable in America in another country really does not have the same agreed upon value just because of a physical defect, which is very interesting. And this affects fungibility, which is something that we're going to talk about later. It's probably a word you've heard thrown around in Monero a lot. So the first thing, we agree something has value. That's when it has value. So
Okay. Ray is saying that you're cut off for a second here. I think you're having some connectivity issues. So I'm sure we can have him jump back in. Taking one small step back, I think it's important to note that the point of this is not to control how people spread or share or talk about Monero. The intent is that those that are talking about Monero have a common set of just like a baseline level of knowledge, so they're not showing something for price's sake
yeah,
or
right, exactly. And kind of the idea is not we're not trying to I'm definitely not trying to convert anyone to a specific ideology or philosophy. I'm trying to set the stage for how blockchain and Bitcoin came into existence. So it's kind of historically perspective that this is what's happened. Um, and everyone's free to decide their own thing. We're not trying to say if you want to work or help Monero, you must subscribe to this stuff. No, it's kind of why did this stuff happen? And it's actually it's a little more important than most people might realize. Why knowing why stuff happens, because then we can understand the major players and the major scenes that are going on within the community a little bit better, and we can kind of understand people a little bit better. And especially as PR people, understanding other people is quite important. So the second thing, before I got cut off, I apologize. My headphones died for just a second. The second thing that affects value is scarcity. The more scarce something is, generally, the more valuable that something is. So if if you want to buy my eggs and you reach down and you get a whole bunch of dirt, I live in the desert, you get a bunch of dirt and say, here, I'll give you this for your eggs. I'm going to reach down and get my own handful of sand and say, well, I'm just as rich as you in sand. I don't need that. Um, so scarcity ultimately feeds into the first thing. So really it all comes down to the first thing. What is the agreement to value? But scarcity feeds into that because people mostly agree if there's fewer of something in the world, then that means fewer people can have it, so it's worth more. So generally, precious metals are known to be finite. So um, they're generally considered to be more valuable. Things like gems and jewels and stuff like that. And people can make artificial scarcity when they say, "Oh, we only made 15 of these guitars. There's no more of these guitars in the entire world. We only made 15." So all of a sudden, these prices are artificially inflated because people are like, "Okay, um, we're willing to pay more because there's only 15 in the world." And it's artificial because there's only 15 of that particular make of guitars in the world, but honestly there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of other guitars in the world that will probably play just as well. But because they're like, oh, this one we put a little scratch right there, so it's now we're charging another $3,000 for it. Okay, scarcity makes value. Scarcity feeds into the idea that people agree that something has more value. So as we walk through blockchain, we're gonna start revisiting some of these economic concepts as kind of an underlying foundation for the ideology under which this was made. And then I think a lot of decisions about how blockchain technology works, the things about it like mining, they start to make a lot more sense. They start to mean something a little bit more because they weren't just arbitrary decisions made. They were made in order to mimic a lot of these things and actually give Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies value in that sense. So we're done with laying down the economic and to some extent the ideological framework. So we're going to jump into technology just a little bit here. Blockchain. What is it? It's a word that's thrown around. Some people say it's going to be the way forward. It's the future. It's going to deliver us from XYZ. The truth is, blockchain at its core is a very, very slow and very, very inefficient database, and that's it. For those who don't know or who are not quite so familiar with what a database is, it's just like a table on a computer. We've all worked with those tables in math class or whatever that says, okay, Diego has hair color, eyes. Okay, Diego has brown hair, brown eyes. SGP, he's the next row. SGP has what color hair and eyes do you have, SGP?
Blonde and blue.
Blonde and blue. Okay, and Lucas, you're the third row.
Yeah. Blue and brown.
Okay, so I can go onto a computer where this database is located, and I can type in, "Give me everything that you have for blue eyes," and SGP and Ziagu would show up. Or I could say, "Give me everything you have for Diego," and it would show all of my results. In fact, when you go onto Amazon and you click on a product, everything there is actually pulled from a database. Amazon says, for each product, what do we have? Price, how many do we have in stock, the different colors that we have, all this different stuff, right? Everything is stored on a database. So a database is just a place where information can be stored in hopefully, if it's set up well, a logical manner where a human or a program can retrieve this information later. So everything in our internet interconnected world is basically stored on a database somewhere. The cloud is really just a bunch of databases on other people's computers. And the databases have one fundamental flaw, though. They require trust. So it's a great way to store information, but there's always a database maintainer, a person with administrative rights that can change any row, any cell in this database for any reason at any time. And we are trusting these maintainers for two things. Firstly, we're trusting that they will not maliciously change or even accidentally change. They will not change the database to an inaccurate state at any time. We're trusting that they're not going to do this. So Amazon, when they give people kind of database rights, the ability to make some edits and stuff, they're expecting that if they want $1,000 item, they're not going to change it real quick to $3, purchase it, get it delivered to them, and change it back. Right. So as a business, they're trusting that these people aren't going to do that. And secondly, you're trusting in the defense systems that they have set up to prevent third parties like hackers or anyone else who wants to try to get in and change it for their benefit. You're trusting in the defense systems that they've set up. Maybe they're noobs, they didn't put up good defense systems, maybe there's negligence, maybe they were lazy. And if that's the case, then your system is not secure. These people are going to come in and change it or steal the data or whatever. So those are the two primary things we're trusting in. We're trusting in the server maintainers to not do things themselves and the defense systems that they put up to not enable third parties to do stuff. Now, for our stupid little database about hair and eye color, it really doesn't matter if somebody hacks into this or if I maliciously change SGP's hair color to white, right? Nobody cares about this database. It's a stupid database, and it doesn't reflect reality. Well, things start getting a little murkier when we start talking about our banking system. Most of banks, in fact, I would wager to say all banks in current day use databases for people's money. As in, when I go to my bank and I give them $5, they don't take out the Diego box, put in the $5, and put it away. And so when I come at a later date, they pull out the Diego box and give me the same $5. That's not how it works. I give them $5 and it kind of goes physically into a big pool of money. And they keep track of who has how much with a database. Diego has $15, SGP has $20. And then if I give SGP money through their online interface or whatever, and it does it automatically, it doesn't really take the money from the Diego box and put it in the SGP box. It's just on the computer. It just says Diego deducts 5, SGP plus 5. So, and this is at its basics, this is a ledger. So I said that word a little earlier. This is a ledger, and it's just a list of information with totals at the bottom where we can keep track of who has what, when, why, how. Diego plus 10, minus 10, depending on if I'm receiving or sending, and then the person on the other end has to equal out. So it always must equal to 0. If Diego spends $10, minus 10, SGP receives $10 plus 10, we have minus 10 plus 10, combine those, that has to equal 0. Because otherwise, there's money being created or destroyed on either side. If Diego gives $10 to SGP, so minus 10 on Diego, and SGP receives $20 for some reason, a bug in the system or whatever. Now all of a sudden 20 minus 10 equals 10. $10 has just been created out of thin air. And the bank is not going to have enough money. Well, the bank never has enough money because of fractional reserve banking, but the bank is not going to have money in an ideal world where they don't do fractional reserve banking. They're not going to have enough money to credit everybody, to give everybody their money back. So for anything that I missed or that I talked about SGP so far?
No, I think you got the basics of a ledger. I mean, a bank theoretically could go through the process like you described, where you have individual boxes for each person's money and keep all the accounts separate. And it's possible, but it would take a lot of work. And I just want you to keep that in mind as we look towards how we use Monero on chain and how we really use Monero, because there's some cases where it might not make sense to use things in essentially the same way, even if it's just a different digital way. But
Right.
we'll get into that a little bit later.
Right. So we're talking about trust of databases, right? That you have to trust the database maintainer that they're not going to maliciously change. So we think within a financial banking system, if they maliciously change their account to have more money, then they are richer. Or let's say they want to get revenge on somebody, an old girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, change their account to have less money. This is obviously illegal, right? So that's the primary incentive for people not to do this, is that this is illegal. But we're also trusting that they're not going to get hacked for some reason. And our PayPal accounts or our bank accounts or whatever, the numbers are just going to be all wonky and it's going to really make our lives a nightmare. We're trusting in these people not to do those things. Now, the whole thing with cypherpunk ideology, once again, remember, is that we don't like areas where there is potential for human corruption. We would rather those areas be replaced by provable cryptography and mathematics. So anybody who has the capability can thoroughly vet the code, assuming it's open source, can look at the math that is presented and the cryptography that is presented, and verify for themselves that everything is safe. They don't have to trust the word of the system maintainer when he says, "Oh, don't worry, I didn't do this and nobody got in." Don't worry. We're trusting him. We have to trust him and say, "All right, man," because we can't verify it ourselves. We don't have access to the logs and to the databases. We don't have access to any of that. We have to trust what they say. So we don't like to have to trust people because people are corrupt. And maybe you're not corrupt now, but maybe you'll be corrupt later. Everybody has the potential of corruption. It's just the way of things. It's just the way that it is. And so rather than having to trust, we kind of mitigate that on a human level by saying, well, let's put 3 people in charge. Let's put 4 people in charge. Let's put 5 people in charge. That way we don't have to trust one person. We can trust several people. And, there's a text to that. What if they collude together? What if somebody's able to do something under the other people's noses? There's a lot of things that go into that. And this is a thing that we're going to really start to also, this is another thing that we're going to start to see. You're going to realize that if one person is responsible for this, it's much more convenient for everybody else. And the more people we put involved, the less we have to trust each individual person, but the more inconvenient it is, because now we have to pay more people. Now more people have to give up their time voluntarily, or whatever the situation may be. This is going to be a theme always across blockchain. The more people you get involved with something, the less trust you need on individual people, assuming they all have the same rights, but the more inconvenient and inefficient it's going to be. And this is what blockchain does. I said blockchain is a very inefficient database. Sorry, there's just a question I'm looking at real quick on the YouTube. What's going to happen to all security developers in the banking industry if we deploy the most secure financial ledger in the world? Oh, they will continue to exist, and we'll get to why in just a little bit. So, inefficient database. This is not completely correct. So what I'm about to tell you is not 100% the way things are in terms of blockchain, but I will say it first so we can kind of get we can get to grips with the idea behind blockchain, and then we'll make it more correct as time goes on in just a second. So if we think about how do we eliminate trust with financial, especially with ledger information? Well, what if, and this is kind of what Satoshi Nakamoto, a name you may have heard thrown around, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the anonymous developer of Bitcoin. The idea is we can give the database, instead of having one database that one guy or a group of guys control and we trust them, what if we gave that database to everybody who wants it? And so here's the thing. The Bitcoin network is just this database of how much money each individual wallet has. And if we give it to everybody who wants it, then at that point, if I try to maliciously change to give myself more Bitcoins or less Bitcoins, now all of a sudden my database is out of sync, does not agree with the rest of the databases around the world. So when I try to transact something, they're going to say, yeah, but see, we don't have on our databases that you have these Bitcoins. And I just checked with my fellow computer over there. Every computer that has a copy of the database or the blockchain is called a node. So I just checked with my other node, X and Y and Z, and they agree with me, and none of us agree with you as to the state of the database. You have more Bitcoins in yours than we think that you have. So we're not going to accept this transaction into the network. So all of a sudden, now me who tried to be fraudulent, the only thing I can really do is delete my copy of the database and re-download a correct one from somebody. And the cool thing is I don't even have to trust that one person. I can download from several people on the network, compare them against each other for accuracy, and like, okay, yeah, all these people seem to agree, so I'm fairly certain that I have the correct copy of the database. And in theory, I can, let's say there's 10 total people on the network, I can download from all 10 of them, and if they all agree, so I don't have to trust a single person or 5 people. I can download from every single person on the network, assuming I have the internet bandwidth and storage space and stuff, and then be able to look and say, okay, all these agree with each other. Now I know that I have the correct database. So where does mining come in and all this stuff? Well, that's a little further down the line. Let's just get to grips with this one idea. The fact that we give the database to whoever wants it means that we don't have to trust a central maintainer. And now it becomes, by standard definition, unhackable in the traditional sense. Because if somebody does hack into my database and deduct the amount of Bitcoins, not spend them, we're not going to say they spend them with my private key. Let's say that they just deduct the amount And so I don't even know that my database has changed. But now all of a sudden I'm out of sync with the rest of the people again, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, you don't have a correct version of the database." And I'm not malicious, but I'm like, "Oh, okay." I just delete my database and re-download from these guys, and all of a sudden what that hacker did was reversed quite easily. Probably at the just some annoyance and frustration at having to wait for the blockchain to download. If you've ever tried to download Monero or Bitcoin or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So in the idea of distributing this database, this is a distributed network, distributing this database to whoever wants it, to everyone who wants it. In this way, we remove the trust of the system maintainers and their security that they put around. But it is much more inefficient because now, before, when I wanted to send SGP money through the traditional banking system, I let one person know, the bank, and they made it happen. But now with blockchain, I have to tell, if I don't want to be out of sync with everybody, that means that everybody has to know that the ledger is being updated. I have to tell everybody on the network. I have to say, hey, everybody, I have to yell to everybody, everybody, I am sending 1 Bitcoin to SGP. Can you please update your ledger information so that way we can all be in sync? Maybe some people are far away in the back, maybe some people are deaf, maybe all this stuff, right? And so now it just becomes more difficult. And so this happens peer to peer, computer to computer. I personally, when I have a node, am not connected to every other node in the network. I'm connected to 5, 6, 10, and then I tell them, and they tell 10 others who tell 10 others, and this just kind of propagates across the entire network. And if there's a portion of the network that is hard to reach or they're offline or something, then they're not going to have the updated information. So we need mechanisms to get people back in sync if they've been offline for a while. So you see, things just become so much more complicated. There's a lot of more moving parts there than just telling the bank and they upload they change their centralized server to the correct ledger information. Now there's so many more moving parts. It's so much more inefficient. And this is huge to understand. Databases don't just hold financial information. Like I said before, Amazon has a database. It can hold any information: pictures, strings, which is just words and stuff, integers, numbers. It can hold any sorts of information. What a lot of people are doing in the cryptocurrency scene nowadays, and we're going to kind of just dive into just this little tangent because it's an important one, especially if you're new to the cryptocurrency scene. You're going to see a lot of ICOs. You're going to see a lot of people that are saying, we're going to use blockchain for this. We're going to do Uber, but with blockchain. We're going to do IHOP, the International House of Pancakes, but with blockchain. So the idea is that a blockchain can, in theory, do anything that a database can do. You can theoretically have an Amazon that runs on blockchain. The thing is, it's going to be horribly, horribly inefficient. I imagine Amazon's database is massive. They have so many products, so many everything. And if all of these images and products and everything has to be shared across all of the nodes who participate in this Amazon blockchain network, then that's just so much bandwidth usage and storage space. My home computer could probably not run an Amazon node because it's just too massive. So anyone who doesn't have just huge industry grade computers, first of all, won't be able to run it, and our internet would constantly be going because we're giving the blockchain to people who want it and we're receiving new stuff and new additions and new changes. It's just not feasible. Really, the most feasible use of blockchain is small bits of information transferred to and fro. And Ledger fits that perfectly, Ledger information, because it's really just numbers being updated, and it's not gigantic images and stuff. So if you look across the crypto land, you'll see people like, we're going to do all sorts of stuff with blockchain. And you know what? And to some extent, nothing ventured, nothing gained. This has never been done before, maybe. So, sure, give it a shot. Maybe it'll be wildly successful and change the world as we know it. 99% chance, probably not.
Uh,
Because, what's up?
yeah, if I could just interject for
Go
a
for it.
really simple example here. So imagine if Google Drive was a distributed blockchain service product instead of something you trust Google with. Imagine, to simplify things incredibly, imagine that you In order to access your Google Drive files, you needed to download every single file that anyone has uploaded to Google Drive and then search all of the files to determine which ones are yours, and then you would be able to use yours. Is it theoretically possible? I mean, maybe. If everyone had like massive servers that they ran at their house. But is it reasonable? No. And that's why you have an element of trust where you just trust Google to provide this information for you. So blockchain is similar in this regard. Diego's providing the example where, yes, you could have insert system here that's distributed across every user on the network. But if you get into that sort of significant complexity and have that much information, you run into the situation where no one can really run this information. It doesn't really make sense to do, and you just recreate the same centralized models you had earlier, where you might have, sure, Google Drive is a blockchain product, but Google would be the only one running it, and then it's centralized again. So there'd be no significant reason to use a blockchain over their traditional system, because you no longer remove the trust. You no longer use blockchain as a mechanism to remove trust. The trust is still there if it's centralized. And this is, I suppose, a little bit of a summary of what Diego was speaking about. You can think about it from this pretty simple example. If you're sharing really simple information, like just how much money someone has, related to a certain account, and there's still a lot of concerns regarding the efficiency of this, but that at least makes a lot more sense than much more complex data that would be more difficult to distribute.
Right. We already face scaling problems just with this small bits of information that we're throwing around. So much less talking much bigger amounts of information. So yeah, thanks SGP. Uh, One of the primary things to get from this little tangent here is that not everything needs to be trustless. Okay, so I'm going to, at the risk of alienating some people who may or may not be invested in this coin, I am going to speak about one particular coin. Okay, and this coin is Campus Coin. There was a cryptocurrency meetup in my city, which is quite small. It's a small city, and so there was three people at this cryptocurrency meetup besides myself, and one of those guys was going on really into the ICO culture, going on and on about Campus Coin. So the idea behind Campus Coin is that it's a coin specifically, if you couldn't guess, for campuses to pay for tuition, to pay for their meal plans and stuff like that, and other things that they have on campus. They're trying to sell it to different campus, like, oh, you should integrate this as a way of accepting tuition and money. And so we have to think, what is blockchain trying to do? Well, now we know blockchain is trying to remove trust from a database. That's really what it's trying to do. I mean, said in very simple terms, blockchain is trying to remove trust from a database. Now, I may be hanging out on the wrong internet forums, or it may just be happen outside of my vision, but I am not aware of a ton of people in the world that are screaming about the fact that their campus is cheating them out of their food points or stuff like that. Okay, so really, what's happening here is people are trusting that when they swipe their card to get into the buffet or whatever, that the amount of points is going to be accurate. So it's like, okay, you have 10 more times to come to this buffet. You have 20 more times. You have one more time. And I'm like, what? I thought I had 50 more times. Okay, well, I can just go sort that out with the campus, what happened type thingy. There's not a huge amount of people that are yelling to the world saying, hey, I'm being cheated here. I demand that there is radical transparency, and I demand that there is a trustless system that is implemented for my buffet points or for my tuition and stuff like that. There's no demand for this. Not everything needs to be trustless. Not everything needs to be trustless. There are great benefits to a centralized infrastructure. Some of the things that benefit from being trustless, at least the one use case that pops into my head, is world finances, kind of who has how much when, because there is so much incentive for people to destroy finances, to get more finances. There's so much incentive via greed that, it probably is better that this is trustless. But what incentive is there? I mean, maybe there is some incentive. What incentive is there to hack a campus database and give yourself 50 million buffet visits. And so you always have to weigh the pros and cons of something. The cost of inefficiency for turning something into a trustless system versus the benefits, or no, sorry, versus the incentive that other people have to break that system. And if you do that pro con analysis, you will find that very few things actually fit. Very few amounts of people actually want to break systems totally. People like breaking systems, don't mistake that. But the costs of inefficiency for blockchain, most people greatly underestimate. It is so inefficient. Like I said, we already have scaling problems just with exchanging little bits of information. It's really hard. So it's not worth it. And the fact of the matter is that generally most ICOs for the insane things that they promise, we're going to revolutionize XYZ industry with blockchain. It's not going to work out just for that reason. It's really tough. It's really hard. Um, so that just that little tangent there, and you see, we haven't even gotten into kind of the whole, well, there's no liquidity, there's no US dollar to campus coin, we have to go through Bitcoin, so it makes it harder. We haven't even touched on any of that. We're just talking about the technology. We're not even talking about on ramps, off ramps, the kind of the economics viewpoint of it. We're just talking from technologically, does this make sense? The answer is no. It really doesn't. The answer may even be no for ledger information. And if that even doesn't work, then I don't know. Different people have different ideas about that type of stuff. So that's a fun little tangent to go on. And if at any point in time people want to just
Dig, I think Dig, you're having some issues again. This seems pretty typical of some of our chats sometimes. Yeah, but I think the points that he was addressing are really important. That you need to really think why. Why do we have these sort of frameworks in place? Why are we trying to develop these sort of systems? Um,
okay. Were you saying something, SGP? Sorry, I don't know why my headphones are being stupid today.
no, I just was summarizing. You can jump back in.
Okay, great. So I hope we're all on the same page so far. Like I was saying before I cut out, if anyone wants to at any point discuss with me different ICOs and kind of the culture surrounding it and stuff like that, and what I personally think, these are just my personal views. Now we're going into opinion. Um, Please feel free to contact me. We can talk about this. I mean, heck, even at the end, if people have those questions, we can go ahead and do that. But for now, let's go ahead and move along. So we know what blockchain is for. It is an inefficient database that is distributed to a whole bunch of people with the intent of eliminating trust from said database. And the primary use case, at least that exists right now, is with ledger information. We've got all that under our belts. We understand kind of the ideology, I hope, behind it, in that we want to remove areas of human corruption and the idea that because the government is no longer on a metal standard, they don't have to just print the amount of money that they have in reserves. They can print however much they want, whenever they want, for any reason that they want. And what this does, going back to economics a little bit here, this is called inflation. So remember when I said that scarcity contributes to value. The more scarce that something is, the more valuable it is. So in fact, if more of something come into existence, then it's less scarce, meaning every individual unit of this thing is worth slightly less. So if one more of these limited edition guitars out of the 15 comes into existence, now all of a sudden it's everyone's individual guitar is worth a teeny bit less. So when the government prints 2 billion more dollars, however many more dollars, everybody's dollars is worth a little bit less. Everybody's individual dollars is worth a little bit less, which is why 50 years ago a burger was, I don't know, 30 cents or something, and now it's like $2.50, because over time the amount of dollars that have been in circulation has increased, meaning everybody's dollar bills individually has become worth less and less, little by little over time, until it's barely noticeable year to year, until vendors raise their prices because now the 30 cents that they received for the burger is just not, they can't get the same for 30 cents. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, just got all tongue twisted there. It's not worth the same. So they charge more for it. This is inflation. This is what inflation is. And the fact that there is no accountability to the government, well, we know there's internal accountability that we have to trust for them to do what they want, when they want with the money, with the printing privileges that they have. And the only recourse that we have is to elect different people in office or different stuff like that. So Satoshi, whatever, Nakamoto, basically, he's like, so as a cypherpunk person, we want to make it open for everybody and have cryptography to prove that the only XYZ amount of Bitcoins are ever in existence, and anyone can verify that and anyone can look at it. So, Bitcoin kind of has a schedule of minting new Bitcoins, and at any given time, you can know how many Bitcoins exist and relatively how many Bitcoins will exist in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, etc. Sorry, this was something I had forgotten to touch on in regards to the economics portion. Now finally we're gonna stop talking about Bitcoin and we're gonna start getting a little bit into Monero. There is one gigantic, huge weakness with this setup that I just discussed about distributing this database to a whole bunch of different people around the world. There's a huge weakness, and it is not scaling. If you follow Bitcoin and the Bitcoin debates, it's like, how do we scale Bitcoin? How do we do this stuff? And it's actually not scaling, and it's not one that is talked about very often, except by people like in Monero who understand that this is a problem. Bitcoin gets rid of trust, blockchain as a whole actually gets rid of trust at the cost of privacy. The fact that let's imagine that Bitcoin is PayPal for a moment. Let's imagine that PayPal has a blockchain and it's everywhere. Everybody has these records. That means that I can look at Justin's account, SGP's account, and I can see, oh, look, at any given point in time, Justin has this much money. He sent money to this place. He received money from this place. Because it's on my computer. I have the whole database. And I can look at it and look through it whenever I want. There's no password protections or any of this kind of thing. I just have the whole thing for viewing. I can't change it because then I'm out of sync with other people, but I can look at it. And
All right. Might want to check your headphones again. But yeah, when he was saying, yes, if you have a distributed blockchain where you have all this information that's shared to many different people, Diego's right that if you have a properly decentralized network where one person doesn't have control over it, that includes you. You can't manipulate the information on there. And so that's obviously an important aspect of the network, is to be able to provide that sort of guarantee. But if everyone's able to see all this information, for example, my banking information, as Diego's using in his example, then you would be able to see, then you'd be able to see that that like I have this much money, I would potentially use these transactions for this purpose, or I was able to receive money or send money in different cases. And that's not necessarily a good thing for people to know, and that's not something that everyone in the world wants people to know. I think Diego will have a separate rant later about the importance of fungibility, in addition to just privacy and why it's important for a basic system. So moving beyond that a little bit, there's different reasons why you would sort of want a decentralized system, why you would want a distributed system, why you would want a system that has no specific entity that you're placing trust in. And one of those, as we discussed earlier with Bitcoin, is security. It's the ability for you to share information, for people to transact without relying on one person to maintain security of the network. It's maintained instead throughout thousands of people, throughout potentially tens of thousands or millions of people all over the world. And so you're not relying on one good actor to just rely as they say they would. Instead, you're reliant upon the entire network as a whole. So that's the clear benefit that Bitcoin provided to the world and continues to provide, is that it has this guarantee for security, that as long as it meets the basics for decentralization, and it's important to think of these not directly as yes or no security on or off, but as kind of a spectrum, if you will. But it provides a high level of security because it's no longer reliant on an individual person. It takes this database, this blockchain, and distributes it among thousands of people. And so it has a high level of security. Similarly, you might want this level of decentralization or lack of trust where you don't need to place your trust in an individual person for the sake of privacy. You don't necessarily want to say, okay, Diego, I want to spend money without other people knowing how much money I have. So I'm going to give Diego this one Bitcoin, and then he's going to like keep it private. It's not necessarily the best sort of model where I need to specifically trust someone to provide that privacy for me.
Mhm.
Similarly, I would not want to say if I really cared about security, I would not give Diego my private keys or the right to spend money I have for him to spend it. I wouldn't say, oh, Diego, I want to keep my money safe, so here's $20. I want you to have full control over this, so please keep it safe. The same basic sort of models apply not only for security, but also for privacy as well. And that's an important aspect that we want to, that really introduces Monero into the fold, because Bitcoin really carried along the strong example for security. And Monero wants to continue doing this, but it wants to also make sure that basic privacy provisions are also in place, because we feel that unlike many ICO pitches or basic pitches of we want to do this but on the blockchain or this but decentralized, we think that privacy is a very clear example, the second clearest example, second only to security, on why you would want to have a decentralized trustless system, because it's a sort of provision that only a trustless system can provide. Okay, Diego, do you want to jump back in?
Sure. So I switched mics, so even if these headphones go off temporarily, I should still be able to talk to you. Do I sound okay?
I think it's slightly worse, but I can still clearly hear everything you're saying.
Slightly worse. Okay. Well, I'm a slightly worse person for this, so that's okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump back in. Blockchain in its most common and first implementation with Bitcoin is it eliminates trust at the cost of privacy. Now anyone can look. Now it is pseudonymous, meaning that it doesn't say Diego has this many Bitcoins. It says that if you've ever seen a Bitcoin address, XY capital N 9 for something, a big alphanumeric string has this many Bitcoins. And some people think that this makes them anonymous. Some people think, well, it's just a number and they can't tie that number to me. Well, what if I'm a merchant? What if I own an online store that sells shirts or mugs or whatever it might be? And I say, in order to pay me, because that's the point of money, is to pay and get paid. In order to pay me, please send to this address. So you send to that address, and now you know my Bitcoin address, Diego Salazar's Bitcoin address, at least for this business. Maybe I have multiple wallets, right? But at least now you know this business's address. You can put that Bitcoin wallet in a blockchain explorer, which is just a website online that looks at that as an overview of the blockchain, and see how many Bitcoins I have in there, which can be dangerous. You know, the biggest one the biggest example that I know how to give is that if you're traveling, you know, you're going from country to country and you buy tacos from the taco stand and you purchase with cryptocurrencies. Now they look, oh, look, this guy paid from this wallet, which has another 50 Bitcoins, which is a lot of money right now. I'm going to go get my cousins and my brothers and sisters, and we're going to go jump him and torture him until he gives us our private keys. There's a lot of other reasons why you're not going to want everybody to know this information. But the fact of the matter is it can be dangerous for some, it can be inconvenient in other ways. And I think if I was to ask anybody, would you be willing to post your bank statements, your PayPal statements online for me to look at? I can't change them, obviously, but I'll look at them and I'll just see what you've been doing. Nobody's going to be super thrilled about that idea. And unfortunately, this is the reality of blockchain. This is the sacrifice that Bitcoin and blockchain made. They said, Well, privacy, it comes at the cost of eliminating trust. Now, Monero people, they said, okay, we love the benefits of security that blockchain provides. We love this. It's fantastic. It's the way to be. But we hate this privacy thingy, and we are not content to leave this as is. So they say, the Monero people, they say, what if we still have all of these, it's still distributed, everyone still has it, but it's obfuscated or encrypted in such a way that you download the database, but if you're to look through it, it's just a bunch of noise. It's just a bunch of random stuff, a whole bunch of stuff stuck together, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't say this wallet has this much. You're like, oh, okay, I can't make any sense of this. Well, if it stops there, then nobody can make sense of anything, and nobody knows how much anything is. But they say, well, if you have the special view key, the private view key, just think of it like your own special magnifying glass, and you go over the whole blockchain with it, you'll be able to identify the things that are yours. So only you, or anyone who has that key, can know which transactions are yours, which are not. So only you can deduce how much do I have in my wallet at any given time. So just as an exercise, if you go to getmonero.org, which is the community-made website that is stewarded by the core team, and you go to the Get Started section on the upper left. I made that website, by the way. And you go to the design anyway, not the content, some of it though. You go to the donating page or the contributing page, one of those two. You're going to see Monero's Bitcoin address right there. I want you to copy that address and go to Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to, and type in Bitcoin Block Explorer. There's a lot of them. And just paste that address into the search bar. You can see how much money Monero has in Bitcoin. And then heck, if you've got a Bitcoin address, you've done some Bitcoin stuff, and you've never done this to yourself, put it on the Block Explorer. You'll see it's public information. It's public information. So how does Monero accomplish this? How does Monero get this privacy stuff? What technologies specifically? First of all, I want to take a quick break here because I've been talking for a long time. Are there any questions about anything that I've talked about so far? From kind of the economics to the cypherpunk ideals to what blockchain is and what it tries to solve, some of its weaknesses, that kind of all set the stage for Monero and what Monero is trying to do. Are there any questions from anybody? Once again, there's a little bit of a delay, so there's going to be a little bit of silence. But as soon as you hear this question, I'll be looking. I'm looking right now. SGP, Lucas, we're all on standby. We're focused in on that chat. It's okay. Silence is okay.
No interviewers. This will just be silence for another 30 minutes. Well, they're pretty patient if they wait through your,
30 more
I don't know,
seconds. Don't worry, I'll time it.
2-minute side
I don't want to
conversation.
waste anybody's time here. Clock, timer, add timer, 30 seconds. Here we go. 28, 27, 26, 20.
Well, it looks like people don't have.
Hold on, 15 more seconds. Hold on. We can do this, guys. We can do this.
I don't know what the countdown works. Counting down.
3 more seconds. 2 more seconds. Yay! Okay, so we made it through that as a community. That was a community building exercise. Now we're all together in that. So let's go ahead and keep going. If you do have questions, go ahead and put them there. We'll answer them as time goes by. So Monero, privacy. How do we accomplish this? How do we do this? Well, the way that Monero does privacy is not the only way to do privacy, and that's a very important point. There are other implementations of different privacy coins, but Monero is, with a couple of exceptions that are quite small, the only one to introduce privacy by default and mandatory, as in you cannot send transactions that do not have these privacy technologies applied. And what this does is this unlocks fungibility. Let's get into fungibility real quick. This is a big concept in Monero, and it's one that many people have difficulty understanding when just the definition is explained to them. But then once I give an example, it'll all become clear. Fungibility is the idea that one of something is equal to another unit of that same something. Another of that same something. So $1 bill is equal to $1 bill, another dollar bill, a different dollar bill. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, well, duh. Well, we take this so much for granted that we don't think about it. I didn't even know the word fungibility until I came to Monero. But I'm going to give you an example. If you have a dollar bill, Justin SGP has a dollar bill, and I have a dollar bill, and we exchange dollar bills, as in I give him mine, he gives me his, no exchange of value has taken place, even though an exchange of bills has taken place. We both still have $1, right? And everyone kind of thinks that this applies to all money, but actually, the funny example that I gave in the real world scenario is that I went to another country and I tried to, they were the same, they weren't the same bills, but they were the same denomination of bills, and some of them were accepted in this other country and some of them were not. So in this other country, my dollar bills are not fungible. One of them does not equal to another because of a physical defect, because one of them is slightly folded or creased or torn or whatever. One of them does not equal another of them. So in this case, I might be willing to get rid of these other ones at a discount. Let's say I desperately need money. Right? I desperately need money. I'm in a medical emergency in this other country, and I have this $100 bill, but none of the banks are willing to take it because it's kind of folded. I may be willing to go to a person on the street and say, hey, I'll give you this $100 bill in exchange for a $90 equivalent of your local currency. So this guy's getting a deal. He's making money because I'm trying to get rid of this so I can pay for whatever medical emergency happened. I'm willing to get rid of this tainted bill at a discount, at a loss to me, just so I can have some money. This dollar is not fungible in this other country. But in America, it's fungible. I'm not going to go to somebody and say, hey, please, can you accept this torn dollar bill? And they're not going to say no. So that's kind of what fungibility means. And everyone kind of thinks, again, this is something that we all take for granted. We don't even give second thoughts to this idea. But Bitcoin, I'm just going to be very blunt. I'm just going to say it. Bitcoin is not fungible. Okay, I said it. Bitcoin is not fungible. Why is this? Well, because of the transaction history, which stays forever, mind you. It stays forever and ever and ever. You can see every single wallet that this Bitcoin has ever been through. Now, let's say this Bitcoin did something that some people might consider less desirable. It was used in an exchange to buy drugs, to buy child porn, any of this type of stuff. And let's say that we know the Bitcoin address because these people have to get paid somehow, right? They say, well, this is my Bitcoin address if you want to purchase something on the darknet market. And we see that this Bitcoin that I own has sometime in its history actually gone to that wallet address. Now, I just received this Bitcoin for my t-shirts that I'm selling on my store. Somebody gave it to me for my t-shirts. I had nothing to do with this, but now all of a sudden, this Bitcoin is potentially tainted, meaning police might come knocking on my door and say, hey, Diego, so you've got this Bitcoin. You are a suspect to being the vendor in this darknet market interaction. I'm like, no, I'm just a t-shirt guy. And even if I had nothing to do with this, all of a sudden I have to go through the headache of proving this, court, whatever, maybe. Who knows? Who knows what I have to go through? And really, it's just better if I didn't know that it was there at all. So even though I had nothing to do with this, I may have to pay the consequences of civil forfeiture. It's like, oh, well, we're taking this Bitcoin as evidence, or any number of stuff. And so knowing this about this Bitcoin, if I look through the history myself before anybody shows up and knocks on my door and I say, oh, shoot, this has been through 1, 2, 3 bad transactions. This looks bad. I might be willing to go to somebody somewhere and say, hey, I'm willing to give you this Bitcoin in exchange for 0.9 cleaner Bitcoins. So once again, that same situation where I'm willing to give it a discount just to get rid of this so I can get something else. that I know is clean. And in the same scenario, the same goes in the other direction. Newly minted Bitcoins that have just come into existence that have no transaction history, in some places are selling at a premium, where it's like, okay, I want to have the assurity that I am not dealing with any tainted anything. So I'm willing to pay 1.1 Bitcoins that have been in circulation for a while in exchange for 1 Bitcoin that is brand new. So in this scenario, if we go back to the I give SGP and he gives me the exchange, if I give him a Bitcoin and he gives me a Bitcoin, there is no assurance that an exchange of value has not just taken place. Maybe I gave him a tainted one and he gave me a clean one. And in this case, value did indeed exchange. Even though the denomination that we exchanged was the same, value may have exchanged. Anything that has a traceable history is not fungible. Now, this does not just apply to money. There's a great article by Crypto Izzy, I think, and he talks about the idea like, oh, what if I have, I don't remember exactly what trinket he said, but a necklace and you have the same necklace, but I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that my necklace was owned by Napoleon or was used by, was worn by a famous musician or something like that, right? Now, all of a sudden, if I put that on eBay, even though it's a $5 necklace, I can sell it for $200. You see tissue papers used by Justin Bieber being sold on eBay for hundreds of dollars. So tissue papers, in this sense, are not fungible. It's weird. So as long as there's a traceable history, things cannot be fungible. But we've also just defined blockchain as a public and open history that anyone could use. So though, by default, anything that has a transparent blockchain, so non-obfuscated, non-encrypted by some means, is not fungible. This also applies to currencies that selectively apply privacy. So you've got ones like Dash or Zcash. The privacy is not mandatory. You opt into the privacy instead of opt out of the privacy. Now, the issue with this is that you have clear transaction, clear transaction, clear transaction, and all of a sudden you have a private transaction. So anyone looking through your wallet can say, hey, so why did you feel compelled on this transaction to make it private? What were you up to? What were you doing? And oh, now all of a sudden you have to justify yourself. Oh, well, this, that, the other thing I was giving to blah, 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 blah. Now all of a sudden the private transactions stand out from the transparent transactions. And so as long as things look different, it has a potential to not be fungible. Monero solves this problem by making every transaction private by default and privacy mandatory. So that way, in theory, we're just going to go to an ideal world because this isn't completely the case. Every Monero looks the same. You don't know where it's been. You don't know who's had it before you. You don't know what transactions or wallets it's gone through. Every Monero looks the same. And so because they all look the same from a top-level observer, nobody can say, oh, well, this Monero might have been through this or might have been through that. In the same way that physical cash that we have in our wallets, I can have this $1 bill and I don't know where it's been. I don't know what's happened to it. I don't know what it's gone through. I don't know its emotional problems, right? I don't know anything about this $1 bill and I don't care. And that's the way it should be. We don't need to care about where these things have been, especially if we were never involved in anything in its past. It's just my dollar bill now. It's Diego's dollar bill, and that's all I want to know about it. And as a merchant, you can imagine just the nightmare it would be where, as a merchant, let's say I do hundreds of transactions in t-shirts a day, and I have to check each Bitcoin, anything that I accepted with a public ledger. I have to check each transaction to make sure I'm not receiving something bad. And then I say, well, this one's kind of tainted. Can you please send me a different one? It's just a nightmare. As opposed to with Monero, I just accept it and I have the peace of mind that knowing that everything is private by default. So privacy, a lot of people get really uncomfortable and think about privacy, anonymity. It's like, well, that's just for criminals. If you're not doing anything wrong, you have no need to hide what you're doing. But first of all, there's arguments against that in and of itself. But even kind of pushing that aside, people don't understand that privacy is just, I like the way Crypto Izzy put it. So I would say, quote, merely a technical requirement for fungibility, end quote, slightly paraphrased, I think. So really, in order to unlock this vital for currency's attribute of fungibility, everything needs to look the same, and the only way for that to happen is privacy mandatory and privacy by default. So really, in this way, Monero is unlike any other currency out there, because with the exceptions of the ones that have forked Monero and started their own currency based off of Monero. All the other privacy coins are opt-in privacy. Pretty much all of them. And I don't know where you are in terms of what coins you believe in, what privacy coins that you like, or what other coins that you like. And I'm not here to tell you that, I don't know. To me, it seems a very obvious decision that Monero kind of did things the right way, and there's a lot of issues with implementation and other things. So personally, I only hold Monero, but here's another thing. Because I help Monero, I'm heavily involved in Monero. Anything I say that is pro Monero should be triple checked for accuracy. And anything that I say that is kind of anti another coin should also be triple checked for accuracy, because you must assume bias on my part. That's not to say that you should disregard what I'm saying. You should triple check it. The way to be is that even if you trust the person, you should double check. If you don't trust the person, you should triple check. Anyway, so just kind of putting that disclaimer. So now we can kind of get to, now we understand kind of the fungibility, one of the reasons that Monero is private. And there's other reasons for privacy as well. There's the reason that there's a healthy tension that must exist between people and their governments, and kind of passive surveillance everywhere, and just people looking at all your stuff without your permission, data being shared. And so there's definitely something to be said for privacy's sake. And this has very recently just been in the news with GDPR and Facebook and how much they collect, and anyone who's been paying attention is not surprised by any of this. But privacy for privacy's sake is definitely important for sure. And that's a discussion for another time. But
yeah, do you mind if I jump in on the fungibility one last before we move on? Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, perfect. So I give a lot of talks about Monero and privacy coins in general. And the best way that I can explain fungibility is through the merchant example. Many people have heard of the WannaCry ransomware attack. It's when people infected other computers about a year ago. They encrypted them and they demanded ransom or a Bitcoin payment in order to, or at least they claimed that they would fix the computers. And so this is, obviously illegal, and it's some nefarious activity that can be done with really any cryptocurrency or any currency, but it was used with Bitcoin. So the issue is that if you are accepting Bitcoin, if you are a guitar website, if you're selling T-shirts, like if you're Diego selling T-shirts, the blame is on you essentially to audit all of the Bitcoin you're receiving to prove that it is not WannaCry money. This is kind of the best sort of example. Sure, there's a lot of other things you need to look for too, but on a really simple example, you need to make sure you're not receiving this nefarious WannaCry money. Because if someone proves that, wow, this person receives WannaCry money on their Coinbase account, Coinbase is rightfully going to close it because you have an immediate direct connection. And this is not something that people necessarily want to go through this sort of direct connection. And so that's it. We have a situation without fungibility that the person receiving funds needs to audit the source of funds they're receiving to make sure they're genuine, to make sure they're as valuable as they say. And if they're not, they either need to charge them or accept it at a premium, so they'll charge 10 Bitcoin instead of 9, or they just will refuse to accept it entirely. In fact, there might be a financial incentive. For example, if someone offered to give me WannaCry money, free Bitcoin, right, free WannaCry Bitcoin, I would have a strong incentive to say no, despite receiving free money, because I don't want to be caught up in all that chaos, right? So that's the basics of fungibility. There is that you want to provide a situation such that the merchant does not have to do that. And there's really two ways to do that. I know Diego talked about the one, but I think to make something fungible-ish in practice, because we're still talking about spectrums here, I think if there was significant legislation to say that the merchant is not liable for any source of funds they receive, that would make most things fungible in practice, where the merchants, if no one cares at all, then things are in essence fungible. Now, granted, you still have some of the edge cases like Diego talked about, where, oh, well, I can prove this money was previously, touched by Obama. Obama had this money and he used it specifically for this purpose. So I'm going to accept it at a discount because it's worth more to me. You have situations like that that might still happen, but theoretically, if no one cared at all, then you would not, money would be fungible. The issue, though, is that because of regulatory pressures, because people do care about certain edge cases because of this, perhaps even just the rarity of getting money that was used for the things they believe in, or who knows what for, then you would need to go to the case where you can't see anything. You can no longer tell what money is which in order to really provide an even greater level of fungibility. You need to have strong privacy to provide an even greater level of fungibility. And I'm sure many things like mandatory private transactions help contribute to that. But that's just kind of my perspective of explaining it in a simple way. Fungibility is important, not just for someone making a payment. Fungibility is important for the person who's receiving money, and it really facilitates just a basic source of financial transaction marketplace in general. All right, that's my spiel.
It's all right, dude. You get a spiel. I get 50 spiels. See, you earned at least 4. For those who don't know, SGP is just the best. SGP does all of the things in the Monero community. He runs the Monero community work group. It's called Monero Community. He doesn't run the Monero Community, period. But he's just the most fantastic guy. Give him a high five later on down the road. He's just the best. So anyway, that's my spiel. So let's go ahead and get into the privacy technologies. This should be the last thing. So if you're like, oh my gosh, we've been going on forever, don't worry, we're almost done. We're almost done, and we're not going to dig too deep into this. We're just going to give a cursory overlook about how all these things work and fit together. Ooh, it's fun stuff. It really is. So Monero utilizes 3 big privacy technologies with an upcoming 4th. So the idea is that we need to hide the origin of the funds, the sender. We need to hide the receiver, the person who is receiving the funds. And then we need to hide the amount that is being sent. The sender, the receiver, and the amount that's being sent. So you can picture in yourself just that little diagram. We've got one side, which is sender, one side receiver, and then the arrow in between them, which is the amount that's being sent. So we need to hide those 3 thingies, and we do that via ring signatures, stealth addresses, and ring CT, respectively. What are these things? So let's go ahead and start with ring signatures. They're probably one of the things that are easier to understand because there's plenty of examples that lend themselves to this. Ring signatures is the idea that when I send a transaction, I mix with, for now we're going to say other people, it's not necessarily other people, but I mix with other people around me, meaning, let's just give an analogy that people can think of in their heads. There's a table, and on one side of the table is the person that will be receiving the money. On the other side of the table is me, and I've got my $5 bill. I place my $5 bill on the table. The vendor is looking away from me. He's not looking yet. And I get some of my friends to also place their $5 bills on the table. So the vendor reaches behind him and grabs a random $5 bill, just one. And he doesn't know who it came from. It doesn't have my name written on it or something. So this kind of ring signatures where you have a whole bunch of people that you say, okay, you're not really spending money, but put your money down there so nobody knows who the origin is. And obviously the more people that I mix with, if I just mix with one other person, it's just me and one other person, then it's a 50-50 chance. Okay, did this come from Diego? Did this come from that other person? If I mixed with 5 people, now it's a 20% chance that on random guess, you'd be able to deduce who it came from. If I mix with 100 people, okay, now all of a sudden, you have a 1% chance on random guess to correctly guess where it came from. And well, I guess now is a good time to step back and say one thing. Privacy is really, really, really hard. Privacy is really hard. If you get almost nothing from this talk, you must understand this. Privacy is so difficult to get right. It is really tough. So I keep saying on random guess, you'd have X% chance to get it right. Well, there's a lot of heuristics and there's a lot of analysis on kind of the timing of people spending and stuff that can be used to narrow down. So from 5 people, I can eliminate person 5 and person 4 because they couldn't possibly because of XYZ reasons, which now means I have an effective mixing size of 3, myself and 2 others. So there's ways to do that type of thing. So, and this is kind of what our fantastic guys in the Monero Research Lab, shout out to Brandon and Sarang, who are our PhDs on staff, that they're always looking at these types of attacks and ways that people can try to minimize the anonymity set of Monero and thinking of ways to prevent against that, either via cryptography or better code implementations or all types of stuff. Really cool guys. They're the best. Give them high fives. They're also the most awesome ones. Privacy is really hard to get right. And this is why Monero kind of has some recommendations. Use Monero in the standard way, because the more that everyone looks the same, the more we all have equal probabilities of being the person that put the equal probabilities anyone could have put the $5 down on the table, as opposed to, well, we can eliminate this guy and this guy because of these reasons. So ring signatures, just to sum up, it's the idea that it's not just I'm mixing with a whole bunch of other people, and so you don't know who the funds are actually coming from. But this gives rise to a funny problem. How do we know that the person who is actually sending the transaction actually has the rights to spend this money? What stops me from accessing this database on my computer, this blockchain, just choosing 10 random people of which I am not one and trying to send that to somebody? What's stopping me from doing that? Because then no money actually comes out of my account, but now all of a sudden people think that, because you don't know the source of funds anyway, so there's no way to prove that I am not one of them. Does that make sense? I'm spending money that's not mine. It's a little bit of a esoteric problem you got to think about a little bit. But the cool thing, and there's a really great simple analogy that I like to use. We use something called a key image. A key image is basically a thing where we say somebody amongst this group of people has the rights to spend this money. In fact, because I'm the real spender, when I'm spending this money, I generate a key image, and that proves that I have the ability to spend it. I'm just getting a thing to check sound. Somebody just commented. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, we Gucci. Okay, we Gucci. Don't worry. Sorry, person, if you're not hearing me. Okay, Anya. Well, what can I do? Get better speakers. Right. I'm sorry. So, the key image. It proves that somebody has the rights to spend this money. The issue is, obviously, if I'm the one holding the key image, then it doesn't matter how many people I mix with. They're like, oh, well, Diego's holding the key image, so it must be him that's spending the money. So we need a way to mix the key image as well. And the very simple analogy that I have for this is that everybody's got an ice cube, and that ice cube is a transaction. Right? Everybody's got an ice cube, and so I'm mixing with other ice cubes. But inside my ice cube is the key image. We all put our ice cubes in a bowl. All the people I'm mixing with, we put our ice cubes in a bowl. We put it in the microwave. And when we take it out, it's obviously just a puddle of water. And inside that puddle of water is the key image. You don't know which ice cube originally had it. All you know is that you can reach into the water and pull out a key image and say, okay, somebody within this group of people had the ability to spend this Monero. So we'll go ahead and make the transaction go through. Sorry if that was confusing. I hope to have slides for this type of stuff in the future. So that way, it's not so much everyone envisioning things and maybe envisioning it wrong or being confused. But that's kind of ring signatures. And Savandra, a guy in the Monero community, he made fantastic videos about this. If you go onto the getmonero.org website, if you go to the What is Monero page, that's the one, it's the last one on the Get Started section. If you scroll to the bottom, there's fantastic videos. I actually need to upload the other ones because he made more. So that's ring signatures. That hides the sender. We have stealth addresses that hide the receiver, and it's basically a way that when I post my Monero address online, and if you send to that, it gets encrypted. It gets encrypted so that way when it shows up on the blockchain, it's just kind of this random thing. You don't really know who it sends to, and it's really cool stuff. If you have any questions about really digging deep into any of these things, you can talk to SGP, myself, MRL, about this type of stuff. I'm really not trying to get in depth because I know these can be confusing topics, especially without slides or presentations to examples. I know that just words can be confusing. So I'm just trying to give a little cursory overview. And then, so stealth addresses is just a way to hide the receiver in that the address itself is encrypted. So if you go to the Bitcoin blockchain, let's say I send money to the Monero donation address for Bitcoin. On the blockchain, it literally says this money went to the Monero donation address. So you know where it goes. But on the Monero blockchain, even if you send it to me, if you to my Monero address, if you go to the blockchain to look and make sure your transaction went through, it's not going to say sent to Diego's Monero address 4L something, whatever that long thing is. It's just going to be a random string because it's kind of encrypted in that way. So not much to talk about stealth addresses there. They're kind of cool. And the issue is, and we'll talk about that issue in just 1 second. The last thing is ring CT, which is a way of hiding the amount. And this is one of the most tricky things that you can do. Because remember, one of the valuable things about blockchain is ensuring that there is no money that is created or destroyed. We don't have to trust anybody. We only have to trust ourselves. But if we're not sure of the amounts, then if I send 10 Monero and SGP receives 20 Monero, then 10 Monero has just been created from thin air. We can do that again and again and again and again and make ourselves rich that way. And everybody else suffers for it. But because nobody can see the amounts on the blockchain, nobody knows that it's happening. So how is it that we can prove that no Monero is being created or destroyed without knowing the exact numbers? It's kind of a weird thing. And so I'm going to explain it in a way that is not completely correct, but will give you an idea of how something like this might be possible. Okay. And so if you want the actual correct version, once again, talk to us later down the road after this presentation. But kind of for general understanding purposes, I'm going to give an incorrect way that this is done. So let's say I'm going to send money to SGP, but we don't want people to know how much money is being sent. But that's the thing. I'm going to send him money. I want to send him 10 Monero. And so he's going to receive 10 Monero. On the typical Monero blockchain, it would say minus 10 from Diego, plus 10 for SGP, equals 0, right? Minus negative 10 on one side of the equal sign and positive 10 on the other side. 10 equals 10. So no Bitcoin has been created or destroyed. Now, what if SGP and I, we shared a secret number? Let's say that number is 5. We shared a secret number between each other. And only us two know that secret number. Now, I multiply my side of the equation by 5. He multiplies his side of the equation by 5. So 50 equals 50. So in this way, we're still sure that no Monero was created or destroyed in this transaction, because 50 still equals 50. But at the same time, everybody else looking at the blockchain doesn't know the actual number that I sent to SGP. They see 50, and they don't know the secret number that we shared. Only SGP and I know that. But because SGP and I both know that number, we can divide this number by 5 and get the actual amount. That makes sense. So this isn't quite how it works. You know, it's a little more complicated. We've got Peterson commitments and range proofs and all that type of stuff. But it's kind of just a general idea of how something like this might be possible. It is possible to prove that no Monero was created or destroyed in a transaction while not knowing what that exact number is. And so that's kind of what's given to the miners for them to put into the blocks and stuff like that. So those are the 3 things that Monero has. We've got the ring signatures, we've got the stealth addresses, and we've got ring CT. We've also got Kavri up and coming, and big shout out to Anonymal. He's fantastic. He's awesome. He's the project lead of Kavri. Kavri is just the idea of it's a mixed net technology similar to I2P and the Tor network, if you've ever heard of those types of things, where we can kind of hide IP addresses by, in a similar way, mixing with other people's computers and stuff like that. It's a little more complicated than that, but way beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today. And in this way, we can hide even the IP addresses of who is sending transactions and stuff. And it should be noted that IP addresses are not in the blocks. They're not stayed forever. So there's the attacks that have to happen via IP addresses. You have to have you have to own a lot of the network, run a lot of nodes, be connected to a lot of people, do different timing attacks. It gets really complicated. But Kavri is up and coming, and Anonymal has been working for a long time to get this technology out, and it's really exciting. Hopefully we'll be seeing an alpha here pretty soon. So the last problem here is that many coins think, well, we can just apply one of these technologies. So recently, Verge, they released their Wraith protocol, and really what their Wraith protocol is opt-in stealth addresses. So they just have one of the three technologies that Monero has, the opt-in stealth addresses. So you don't know who is receiving, and there is some benefit to that. In that, as an example, let's say I want to give to WikiLeaks, and it's not popular in my country. So the receiver is obfuscated. So on the blockchain, you don't know who I'm sending to, so I can't be penalized for that. So that's kind of good. The issue is implementing just one of these privacy technologies, or maybe even just two, doesn't actually do that much for privacy. It's the joint effort of all of these technologies working together that is more than, it ends up being, the total privacy ends up being more than the sum of their parts. So if adding stealth addresses to your coin will give you, it'll give you +1 privacy, let's say on a scale of 0 to 10. So now having stealth addresses, it's +1 privacy. Let's say you add just ring CT, nothing else. That's also maybe +1 privacy. And the same for ring signatures. Let's say you just do ring signatures and don't implement the others. So that's +1 privacy for you. When you implement all of them together, in theory, you would think, well, 1 + 1 + 1 should equal 3. 3 out of 10 privacy. But really, all of these things work together to help mitigate different attacks. There's so many attacks that, like, if you don't obfuscate the amount, but you do obfuscate the sender and receiver, well, there's still attacks that you can kind of trace different things through the blockchain if you have this many resources and this much information. So really, all these things work together to give kind of a 7 out of 10 privacy. So the result of these things working together is more than the sum of their parts. So when people say, oh, well, we have this, or we just have this, and so that's good enough, it usually isn't. Now, all this to say, Monero's privacy scheme is not perfect, and there are many, many flaws. Not just with scalability, because so Monero transactions are much bigger than Bitcoin transactions because there is all this technology working on underneath the surface that Bitcoin doesn't have. It adds more space to each transaction. But it's not just scalability. There are deep flaws. The fact is that the ring signature size that we have currently is a total of 7. So it's me mixing with 6 other people. That's not a big amount of people. So even random guessing, it's you have, I mean, it's not quite that percentage, but you can do the math. What percentage of choosing randomly in terms of guessing the correct person? It's not quite that simple, but it's a small number, and we're working on increasing that in a way that the size costs and the scalability costs are not horrendously bad. Monero is by no means the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of privacy technology. That would be kind of ZK Snarks, ZK Starks, which is implemented in Zcash. But there's issues with kind of the implementation, the way that they went about implementing it, and the fact that it's so very new. Like Sarang from MRL likes to say, just because we don't know how to break it now doesn't mean that it can't be broken, type thing. So by all means, please, 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 do not say, do not tell in our PR outreach, education, all this type of stuff. Monero is, it's the, make no mistake, I believe that Monero is the best that we have right now, but it can improve. Oh my goodness, can it improve? And we're working on improving it. It's not the be all, end all, everything, okay? It's not the best of the best of the best of the best, but we're getting there. and we are committed to getting there because we want to see a world change. We want to see a world where everyone can have privacy if they need to, where people don't have to worry about civil forfeiture or getting things taken away from them. I have friends and family in countries that are, their governments are less than friendly, and at any point in time, they can just come and take everything. And we want to live in a world where those people, even if they lose a lot, they don't lose everything. Now, and so getting into the semantics there, kind of why I'm in this, so we're just going to move along away from that. But we're here to see the world change, and that means making things better and making things better. And Monero is committed to making things better. The Monero community is committed to increasing the privacy conversation globally. We are not the be-all, end-all, and we should not try to market ourselves as such. We should not try to tell everybody that we are, because we're not. But we are what we are, and we're pretty good. So the comparison of Monero to other privacy coins is outside of the scope of this talk. We've already gone on for, in my opinion, quite some time. We're approaching 2 hours here. So if anybody has questions regarding that, it can be at another point in time, and we can kind of discuss the pros and cons of Monero's scheme of ring signatures, ring CT, and stealth addresses versus things like ZK snarks, versus things like Tumblebit and all this other stuff, the other privacy technologies that exist. But for now, I think we're pretty much done, unless SGP has something to add about anything that I've said so far.
Yeah, I think it's really important to communicate the idea that privacy is not on or off. You don't have perfect privacy or no privacy. In fact, you will never get either perfect privacy or no privacy. You can only keep improving to keep getting closer to perfect privacy. Or if you want transparency, you can always do things to make something more and more transparent, even if it's just telling more people about it. So it's really important when you communicate with other people that you really stress this point home, because it allows people to understand that there is a difference between one privacy feature and another. It allows people to understand that one has benefits in certain circumstances over another, that one is better for certain threat models over other, or one is more appropriate in some than others. So it's important to actually communicate this idea so people don't treat, oh, well, why should I care about Monero's privacy feature if coin ABC has a privacy feature too? If they understand on a basic level that there's a difference in the effectiveness of these privacy features, that it's not just I'm using a privacy feature so it's the same anywhere, that there are real differences and there's a lot of nuance. Just understanding that difference is a big step forward, and it'll help people understand, or at least, yeah, it'll help people understand why Monero isn't perfect, right? People will say, oh, well, I don't need to worry about Monero because it's not perfect. Their privacy sucks. I should just join Coin Super Awesome because they say their privacy is perfect. And it allows people to understand that claims of perfection are frankly fallacious, because it's impossible. It's impossible to have something that's perfectly private for every single possible use case. So like at the end of the day, if I share my private key with someone, it's not private. Sure, it might be perfectly, even if you had something that was perfectly private in every other way, you still have user behavior to account for. And you can't really do that. You can just do your best to cover that, but it won't be perfect for every single possible use case because they're infinite. So the best and most important use case I would like to see, at least for the general wider cryptocurrency community, and even beyond to understand, is that privacy is hard, and privacy isn't some binary thing. It's something that will never be perfect, and it is something that will need incremental improvements on to, and that will allow people to understand the differences between these different technologies better.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, just thanks for that. It's so pervasive in this community, cryptocurrency community, kind of this isn't perfect. This isn't perfect. We're not trying to claim to be perfect, guys. And this is definitely one thing that we need to hammer in. If to anyone who wants to do any sort of PR, Monero is never going to try to make claims that we are the one-stop shop. Anybody that knows anything about privacy will tell you that anybody who says that they are the one-stop shop for privacy, run from that person. They have ulterior motives, or they're just stupid. Okay. You can use Tor, you can use VPNs, you can use any of these things, and you can use them incorrectly, and you can out yourself. And it's user error and bad operational security and all these things. It will destroy you, and there's no way to stop that. So as an example, in the Monero technology, if I, Diego, choose to mix with a non-default number of people, let's say I choose the number 53 every time. Everybody else is mixing with 7. But I mix with 53. So on the blockchain, you see 53, 53, 53, and it's consistent. And I'm the only one doing this. Odds are, you can say as an outside observer, this is probably the same guy, because nobody else is mixing with 53 people. Everyone else is doing 7, 8, whatever. Diego's, I mean, not, they don't know my name, but this guy is the only one doing 53 mixes. So we can be fairly certain that the same person is sending these each time. So you see user error, operational security, all this stuff kind of really builds into this type of thing. Privacy is hard. Privacy is so hard. It is so hard, because we will mess it up as users. There's so many attacks onto conventional methods of privacy. So much stuff is built on insecure layers. Like the internet was not designed from the ground up to be private. Email was not designed from the ground up to be private. And so it's so hard to kind of bolt on privacy to these things. Bolt on privacy really doesn't work. It's so hard. So get that in your heads. That's the biggest thing you got to understand. Privacy is so hard. I think we're basically done. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in. And rather than endure another horrifying, awkward silence like last time we asked for questions, there will be one other thing that I will explain to give people a chance to type the stuff in. And there's a couple of questions already feeding in right now, so fantastic. We'll get to those in just a second. The one thing I'm going to clarify, so please ask your questions, even while I'm talking, please do. The one thing I do want to clarify is the difference between security, privacy, and anonymity. This is just very helpful to know, because most people, they do feed into each other, but most people don't really understand the technical, or at least in terms of security, informational security and stuff, kind of the definitions of these things. Security, privacy, and anonymity. Security is the idea that my data is only in the places where I expect them to be, and in the state in which I expect them to be. So as an example, let's say I've got an image of myself, and I put it on my server. If somebody hacks in and steals this image and puts it on their computer because they hacked it and took it, now all of a sudden my data is in a place I did not expect it to be. So it was not secure. In the same way, let's say I have a database where I put Diego's eyes are brown. Somebody hacks in and doesn't steal the data, but changes it to say Diego's eyes are blue. Now all of a sudden the data is not in a state in which I expected it to be. So security is kind of the interplay between these two thingies, where the data is robust, it has integrity, it's the way I expected it to be, and it's in the places I expect it to be, and nowhere else. Privacy is not security. Privacy is slightly different, and it's different than anonymity too. Privacy is that only the people who I expect to be able to view the data can actually view the data, and nobody else. So as an example, if I encrypt, let's say I make a Word document, let's say I write a novel and I encrypt it. And at the moment, it's a work in progress. I expect only myself to be able to view this. I put it on my server. It's completely encrypted. Somebody hacks in and steals my book in its encrypted form. So it's not secure, but they still cannot read my book because it's encrypted and they don't have the password to decrypt it. So it is still private in that sense, because only the people who I expect to view it are viewing it, and that would be me. He's viewing just a bunch of random gibberish because it's encrypted. So it's not secure, but it is private. Lastly, we have anonymity. And anonymity is the idea that you do not know the source of information. You don't know the origin of the information. So it could be anybody. That's, when you say you're anonymous, nobody knows who you are. But it's not the same thing as privacy, actually. So something can be secure and not private or anonymous, or something can be private but not secure or anonymous. A good example is Google Drive, right? We expect Google Drive to be secure. We expect nobody to be able to hack it. Let's say, for sake of argument, that it is. But it's not private because Google can look what's on their databases. Google can look what's on their drive. And it's not anonymous. They know the account that uploaded this thingy, and they know that account belongs to me. And I already gave an example of how something can be private but not secure and not anonymous, in that it's my server. I uploaded my encrypted novel, and somebody took it, but it's still private because they can't view it. And there's a lot to say about threat modeling and all this different type of stuff. Okay, so now we got questions. Great. That was just a fun little thing that I wanted to talk about. Great discussion. Sorry to bring this up, but I missed the beginning and don't know the reasons for the recent poor price performance of XMR compared to other coins has been discussed. I did not discuss that, and I actually don't have any interest in discussing that because I don't care about the price of Monero. I care a little bit because I've got expenses and I get paid by the form funding system somewhat, so it's fun for Monero to be pretty high. But that's ultimately not why we're here. We're here. Well, I'm here anyway to change the world. Please don't leave. No, the idea actually is that anyone who does say they know the exact reason why this coin, that coin is going up, down, doing anything, they're lying and nobody can tell you. So, sad reality. If you like to gamble and play the trades and stuff like that, then just accept the fact that you're gambling and it's chance. So that's that. Next thing. So what you are trying to say is Lambro soon. That's exactly what I'm saying, actually. So if you hold on and for another couple of days, can't be more than 48 hours for sure, then honestly, we'll be just the richest people alive. We'll have to pay a lot of capital gains tax, but it is what it is. So yeah. Also, will 12.2 be tagged today? Jude, I mean, Fluffy Pony, if you're here, if you're watching this, we all waiting on you, buddy. For those who don't know, Fluffy Pony is not the lead developer of Monero. He is the maintainer of the GitHub for the core wallet and for the something else. Luigi does the GUI. He is one member of 7. There's a lot of people that really focus on Fluffy Pony. He's not anyone's boss. No special privileges. Everything that he does has been assigned to him by the core team to do. So how can the community get more people to accept Monero as a currency? Demand, dude. Demand. You go, you say, hey, this VPN, this t-shirt store, this whatever. And you say, I would really, really, really like to pay Monero. Pay with Monero for your products or your services. And they're going to say, sorry, there's just not enough demand for us to implement that. And you get your friend. Your friend goes and say, hey, I really want to pay with Monero for your services. And enough people do that. They're like, hey, you know what? There's just a lot of money on the table that we're leaving here. Let's see about adding Monero. If we want more places to accept Monero as a currency, we as a group need to be willing to spend money. But we're like, oh, I want to hold my Monero. I want to hodl. That's such a stupid meme. I'm sorry. I want to hodl my Monero, my cryptocurrency. I don't want to spend it because I want to get rich. Okay, then there will never be an ecosystem or an environment that's built up around this stuff, and that's just the reality. Find the people that already do accept Monero, and just everybody buy their stuff, because then all of a sudden these guys are like, whoa, implementing Monero was like the very best thing I could have ever done. I just have so many more orders. They're going to tell their friends, their little nerdy business friends, and say, look, I added Monero and I got $1,000 billion more dollars. And their friends are like, oh, I want to add Monero too. If there is no demand, they will not accept it. If there is demand, they will accept it. So patronize and ask people to accept Monero. That's how it can be. Tanya, do you need me to type this presentation into a transcript? And SGP already answered that. That's all I got for you guys. I mean, I can obviously talk for a long time more, kind of about the community structure, governance models, all this different type of stuff. But that's it for me. We're 8 minutes away from 2 hours. Yeah, go for it, Zayagu.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to jump in and say something. So I started the Church of Monero. It's the project that I'm working on, and I noticed I've gotten kind of mixed emotions from the community. Some people who are like, oh, that's interesting. Some people are like, oh, that's cool. And some people who are like, religion, Christianity, what? And so I just kind of want to clarify like the intent and what it is that I'm orienting the Church of Mission, or the Church of Monero towards. Not trying to create a cult or a super complex religion. I want something that is, the intent is to unite the Monero community first and foremost. So one of the things that we see in the cryptocurrency ecosystem is one common form of attack is to try to split the community into, divide and conquer. And with Bitcoin, we saw Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And so what my hope with the Church of Monero is to provide a kind of a meta, like almost metaphysical layer to the Monero community to provide some sort of unifying structure to protect against such attacks. And I want to provide something noble and worthwhile that we can talk about, that people in the Monero community are pursuing and working towards. And I think the Monero Moon mission is really something that I think people can stand behind and be like, well, this is something that like is legit and a worthwhile mission to pursue. And I think that is something that a lot of the cryptocurrencies in the ecosystem are lacking, is a noble, authentic mission to work towards. You've got all these ICOs that are hyping like, hey, we've got a white paper, and we don't really have like an exact plan of how we're going to get to the moon, but we're also not selling anything. Like the Church of Monero, we're not accepting donations. We're not, this isn't a money-making scheme. So we hope that in the future, if we do develop a plan for a particular mission like that, or I don't know, any other sort of thing that really I'm at the center of the Church of Monero, and so it's like I'm kind of delegating like what I think the Church of Monero will or won't do, and that's a form of centralization. But I think there's kind of two opposing forces that work in harmony, really more of like yin and yang, where you have a decentralizing force and a centralizing force. And for the currency itself, Monero, you want something decentralized because you don't want that sort of system to become corrupt. But you need centralizing forces to kind of build structures, and that's kind of what I'm hoping the Church of Monero to do, is provide my version of a form of education and community growth, that it's kind of like a niche that I don't feel is occupied or taken in the Monero community, and it's something that I think I can thrive and build something within that doesn't conflict with anything else that anyone else is doing, and is something that's still unique and still can provide value to the community. So,
all right, yeah, thanks, Sarah.
yeah.
Barring any other questions can be answered in the chat or after the meeting, or contacted us any other way. This is approaching 2 hours, and some people have lives. I'm one of those people, so I want to get out of here. I know many of you might also want to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you learned at least a thing about something, and this was fun. I'm down to do this again for newbies, maybe like once every quarter. There was actually some discussion about doing something like this once every quarter, once every 3 months, to kind of just go over the basics. And this was kind of the first time we did it. I guess it was 2 hours long. So that's what we can kind of try to plan for if we decide to do this in the future. But there's also, again, like I said, other aspects of the community, like the governance structure and other stuff like that. So catch you guys later. Thank you so much for being here. Have good lives, don't die.
Bye, everyone.